It's Friday, May 22nd. This is our final teaching video of the school year. I will post another video next week, but it'll only include the information you need for quiz 24 and test number 8. So just a reminder, quiz 24, test 28, or test 8, I'll put all the information on a video that will appear on Monday. So then you can have the entire week to be able to get all that done. The last pickup date is May 29th, Friday, so make sure you're prepared for that. Okay, let's continue with the post-Cold War world. The Middle East has been even more conflicted than some of the other places we've talked about, whether it's Latin America or Asia. By 1964, some of the Arabs who lived within Israeli land formed what was called the PLO, or Palestinian Liberation Organization, under Yasser Arafat. So to remind you what happened when Israel was established as a nation in 1948, there were people that were living on the land. Now, they had two options. They could stay. If they stayed, they became Israeli citizens. And if they became Israeli citizens, though they were Arabs, they would discover that they lived under the most liberal and freeing laws of all the Arabs within the Middle East. But they were told by the surrounding nations that the Jews were coming to murder them, which was not true, but was told anyway. And when these people tried fleeing, rather than being admitted to their brother Muslim countries like Jordan or Egypt or Lebanon, they were held at the border. So they became this roving group of refugees. Once again, they were refugees largely because these nations that had told them lies, who were supposedly friends and allies. Remember, they're all Muslims, and yet these Muslims force their brother Muslims to stay back and not come in. So it's hard to explain. But the PLO started in 1964, a terrorist organization. They started claiming they were a separate people, and they called themselves Palestinians. They demanded a separate nation for themselves. They say a two-state solution, meaning some land goes to Israel and some land goes to Palestine. Long term, they just want to destroy Israel. This has led to what's called the Intifada. I can't pronounce it. It's right there. I've been struggling with that. Intifada. This is essentially a form of continual war. Endless peace negotiations have been unsuccessful. There has been no real hope. There have been major concessions made, especially by the Israelis under Ehud Barak and others, but, excuse me, there has been no success. And so all the opportunities the Palestinians have had to actually have their own nation, they have refused. They want more. What they really want is the destruction of Israel. 1979. The Shah of Iran, his family had ruled Iran for quite some time. Iran is also remembered historically as Persia. The Shah of Iran was a longtime friend of the United States, but he was also hopelessly corrupt and incompetent. He did not care for his people, and he was unaware of what they were thinking and how they were changing. He was overthrown by an Islamic revolution. This led to the Ayatollah Khomeini, and the Islamic leaders acting as dictators of Iran, and they have been dictators of Iran since 1979. Iran has gone backwards culturally, and by that I mean the people who were once advanced in many different aspects are now more primitive than they once were. In 2005, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad became president of Iran. It's a largely ceremonial position because the real power in Iran is held by the theocrats, by the Ayatollah and his people and the generals of the army. Ahmadinejad was more famous for publicly challenging the West. He wanted Iran to be seen as an equal, as a peer of the United States, and to push back. That has led to a number of confrontations. During the administration of President Barack Obama, Iran was very successful. In fact, they were able to almost compel the United States to send pallet loads of cash to them, literally, on an airplane, pallet loads of cash, in a sign of tremendous weakness and tremendous foolishness on the Americans. President Obama's strategic team was led by a man named Ben Rhodes. They really have very little understanding of how the world works, and has led to a more dangerous world. Now, in response, In more recent times, the United States has taken a harder line on Iran, such a hard line, in fact, that they killed one of the primary Iranian generals when he was in Iraq. And the response now has been that Iran has backed down. They have even sort of informally announced that they're going to be a lot more conservative in their relations with the United States, at least until another president takes power. To give you an idea of what Iran has, this is what Tehran looked like in 1979. These ladies are studying at college in Tehran. This is 1979. This is Tehran today. And so this is not the force of progress. This is something much different. In 2016, the United States, Donald Trump won in surprising fashion over the heavily favored candidate Hillary Clinton. Most people assumed that she was going to easily become president of the United States. People are still debating as to why it happened and what does it mean for the nation. But in the meantime, President Trump has entered into, I think, the third year of his administration. This is President Trump being administered the oath of office. The world continues to be a dangerous and unstable place. The presence of chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons has elevated the threat. Any foolish decision made by any number of nations can lead to death on a massive scale. A few particularly dangerous nations have exported a lot of instability, North Korea in particular. Kim Jong-un is the grandson of the original North Korean dictator. After a precarious transition from his father, Kim has now assumed total control. North Korea is living in a constant danger of starvation. The reason why? North Korea spends overwhelmingly on its army and weaponry, including nuclear research. And so under the administration of Bill Clinton, the North Koreans were able to detonate a form of a nuclear weapon. Now they're working very diligently on developing their missiles. Their idea is that someday they wish to have a nuclear missile that could potentially target the United States. Unfortunately, most American administrations have done very little to mitigate this threat. The people of North Korea starve and die of treatable diseases constantly. There is a massive prison system that regularly imprisons, tortures, and murders North Korean citizens. Kim uses the weapons he builds as bargaining chips with the West, and by that he promises to stop his nuclear program if the United States will give him hundreds and hundreds of tons of food. The United States does, especially under President Bill Clinton, and in return they get promises. So this is Kim Jong-un, the dictator, the leader of North Korea, the man who is responsible for so much suffering. Now, right now there is a bit of a controversy. There are some people who believe he's actually died, and that it is a double ruling in his stead. The problem with North Korea, because it's such a shut up place, meaning information does not flow in and out, is that conspiracy theories abound and they're hard to disprove. So as of right now, Kim Jong-un continues his reign of terror over his own people. Various kinds of diplomacy has failed, though strong arming him has been more successful. Millions of lives are on the line, and by that I mean there has been attempts to treat him with kindness. That has failed. There's been attempts to treat him with harshness. And though nothing has been successful, treating him with harshness has proven so far to be the more acceptable, in the sense that it actually produces results. Under President Obama, there were a number of changes and revolutions that happened in the Arab world. It was called the Arab Spring. President Obama was unprepared for these events. He offered tepid support when strong support was needed, and he lost the opportunity to change things for the better. In this, he was no better than President Bush before him. Neither man really understood what was happening, and they did not act correctly. Now, to be fair, I'm offering this judgment a decade after the events, where I have the benefit of hindsight. It was difficult to know what to do in the midst of it, but we can now say that what he did was certainly incorrect. When he did engage, he made things worse. Syria has a dictator, Bashar al-Assad. He is deeply unpopular with his own people. When civil war erupted in Syria, he used chemical weapons on his own people. He killed them by the thousands and 10,000s. President Obama had said that chemical weapons are a red line that cannot be crossed, and that if Syria does such a thing, the United States would intervene. And then Syria did it, and President Obama backed down, which greatly hurt prestige, and it also hurts Americans abroad. If the American president will not follow through on his threats, then everything is just perceived as an idle threat. going back to the time of President Theodore Roosevelt, who said, "Speak softly but carry a big stick." The idea was, don't make idle talk. If you say something, do it, and make sure you have overwhelming force to get it accomplished. Unfortunately, President Obama's strategy was more talk frequently and do nothing, and that led to a lot of destruction and suffering. This is the leader of Syria, or part of Syria today. Syria has been fractured, and its people have spread to the far corners of the world. But this is Bashar al-Assad and his wife. His wife grew up in London. They look happy, they look nice, and they are responsible for the murders of tens of thousands of people. Just keep in mind, you can't always judge a book by its cover. Hundreds of thousands of Syrians have died. Millions have become refugees. These refugees have brought with them violence and instability in many cases, and this has created problems everywhere, but especially in Europe. This is a hard question with no easy answer. I can't tell you this is what should happen or this is what shouldn't happen. It's just too complex to instantly boil down into a simple soundbite. Venezuela, another nation that's gone through a lot of change. Venezuela, as we mentioned, has degenerated from the richest country in South America to the poorest. Even today, massive protests rock the capital. Thousands have starved to death. Others are being executed by their government, and protests continue as Nicolas Maduro continues to dominate the people of Venezuela and to steal abundantly from them and to impoverish them for his own benefit. The advent of coronavirus, which originated in China, has revealed deep fissures in world relationships, specifically between the East and the West. The Chinese have been dishonest from the beginning. They were dishonest about where it came from. They've been dishonest about how it is transmitted. They have used the World Health Organization as a simple fool to assist them in their dishonesty. They have withheld goods that have been rightfully purchased from others. They have tried to make themselves look good during this, but they have been incredibly deceitful. For your own information, all the numbers that come out of China should be disregarded entirely. They have not told the truth. The economic impact of the coronavirus is yet to be determined, and in fact won't be fully discovered for quite some time. The world continues to be a difficult and a hard place to anticipate, which it has been in all time. As we go through, we have the benefit of hindsight. It's easy to, 700 years after the event, say what did happen, what should have happened, and what might have resulted. It's much harder in the midst of these events, as we are experiencing now. This concludes our history for the year. Next week, I will post a single video, and it will include instructions for your quiz number 24 and test 8. It's the same instructions you've already received in previous days. Make sure those are submitted to me by Friday, May 29th. That's all you have for the rest of the year. So congratulations. Enjoy the summer. I appreciate the time and effort you've put into this class.